Hello and welcome to Working Lunch, the Slow Chambers weekly series where we connect with our community leaders who are doing exciting things in our community. I'm Jim D'Antona, CEO of San Luis Obispo Chamber of Commerce, and today we'll be having a conversation with the co-owner of the center, formerly known as the Slow Yoga Center, Steph Stackhouse. Located right downtown on Higuera between Broad and Napomo, the Center Studio is a local family-owned wellness studio offering mind-body health and community empowerment. While Steph began her career in market research and strategy in the Bay Area and Seattle, she returned to Slow in 2014. And since buying the studio in 2014, she has striven to create a space where all people are welcome to gather, move, laugh, and do the work to elevate and inspire themselves and each other. In the past year alone, they've expanded into retail, the Center Boutique, rebranded the company, and have launched virtual as well as community park-based classes. The center's commitment to creating community goes beyond just their doors. Steph has not only shared her knowledge of yoga with her students of the center, she's also gone out to the California Men's Colony as a facilitator for Prison Yoga Project and volunteered with our friends at Restorative Partners teaching yoga at the county jail and most recently with youth at Juvenile Hall. Additionally, we are lucky to have Steph as one of our amazing board members at the chamber, and she also serves as the vice president of the Downtown Slow Board. I'm so looking forward to talking with Steph about her career in tech market research before coming to Slow, what it's like to open a new line of business during the pandemic, and what drives her passion for community connection. Steph, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Jim. Happy to be here. Really grateful.
Terrific. So let's just get a real quick, where are you zooming in from today?
I am in my home office, the place where when I have to be in front of my computer and I need quiet is the place to be. So that's where I am in Slow.
Fabulous. Well, I always like to start by learning a little bit more about how people's career path started. Were you the type of child that was always hustling with a lemonade stand or Girl Scout cookies or destined to be in business?
Yes, I would say that's definitely true. I remember as a kid, doing pretend play, pulling all the books off of my parents' bookshelves, getting my toy cash register out and pretending like I had a shop, greeting customers, ringing them up for purchases. So I was always on that career track, and it was just never a question that I would go and study business in college.
Well, so then, yeah, I love the idea of the imaginary bookstore. That's so fun. Was there something special that drew you to Cal Poly and to majoring in business? Was that a family thing, or was that just kind of Steph's thing?
Yeah, it was definitely my thing. I mean, my dad, civil engineer, my mom, family homemaker, and so for me, it was just always, I just always knew I would go on to study business, and Cal Poly just looked like the place to go to study. Why not, on the Central Coast and the beauty of the area and all that. So ended up going into Cal Poly and just greatly enjoyed the time that I had studying here.
Well, and I understand that you even worked part-time while in college at the Visitors and Conference Bureau, now what we call Visit SlowCal.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit where you went from there.
Yeah, so yeah, that was a very cool opportunity to work part-time for the VCB. And funny enough, just really quick side note on that, I actually, as part of that role, used to take minutes for the chamber board meetings, funny enough. So very full circle moment to now be on the board. But yeah, after graduating from Cal Poly, my husband and I, we both went to Cal Poly. We got married after graduating, moved back to the Bay Area where we were raised, lived in San Francisco, and I started working in market research for a startup company and lived in the Bay Area for close to 12 years. And then my job at the time with a startup gave us the opportunity to move up to the Seattle area. And so we did that thinking that a change of scene, something outside of California would be a nice change of pace for a few years. And so that led to staying in the startup world for a little bit and then eventually going to Microsoft.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So that's a pretty significant jump up to the Microsoft must have been exciting, but I assume also maybe a bit of a stressor. Is that maybe where you first encountered yoga?
I actually started practicing yoga while I was working at LinkedIn. And LinkedIn at the time was very much a startup company. I was in a sales role for them. So it was very high pressure environment, great company, and was grateful for the experience. But I was in need of something to get me out of the stress of my everyday work mode and found yoga. And it just was such a gift. It provided relief in so many areas in my life. And soon after practicing, I dragged my husband along, and he and I both started practicing daily. And it just became a way of life in a way that we had no idea how insignificant an impact it would have in our lives when we first started practicing.
Having some parts of my family up in that Pacific Northwest area, and the standard operating procedure up there is the different shades of gray, which are the different four seasons. Sounds like maybe you were jonesing for, especially as a Californian, jonesing for some of that sunshine. What was your plan when you moved back to SLO?
Yeah, so we had originally planned to be there for a few years, and that turned into 8 years. And we have two daughters. One was 3 at the time that we moved up. We ended up having another daughter while living in the Seattle area, and it was just we were ready to come back to California. My older daughter was going to be going into junior high, and we just knew that we had to either make that transition then or maybe wait until she was done with high school. And so we just decided to set our sights on coming back to California, but didn't want to go back to the Bay Area. It was, expensive, a rat race, and we were really looking for a lifestyle change. So we decided to set our sights on where do we want to be, and then hope that everything else fell into place. And fortunately it did. But we thought Central Coast, we loved it here when we went to college. We came for a family vacation just to see, is it still as lovely as we remembered? And it was. And so we just decided to make that leap. And fortunately, my manager at Microsoft was agreeable to letting me continue to work in a remote capacity. And so that made the transition so much easier.
Wow. So 2014 remote work, something that a lot of people weren't doing, but you guys were really ahead of the trend there.
Yeah.
And we hear, it's obviously a very familiar story for a lot of folks in SLO is to come here and then kind of figure it out. And obviously you've kind of done that. And we hear a lot of talk about that work-life balance. But I imagine that going from working in a huge company now to owning like a small business was not necessarily less work, just kind of really different. I assume, the idea to jump into SLO yoga was part of that transition back into that. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about what that transition was like and how you approach your work and wellness.
Yeah. So we, one of the things that was hardest to leave behind in the Pacific Northwest was the studio where we started practicing and the community that had formed. And so kind of job number one for us was finding a new studio to go to and take class. And we joined SLO Yoga Center as members soon after moving here, and got to know the owners, and that turned into a conversation about how they were wanting to sell, and the timing was right for us to buy it. And so that was in and of itself very fortunate to have happen. But yeah, quite a dramatic series of transitions that we went through in a really short amount of time. And so, for me, it's so what I will say about work-life balance first as a disclaimer is that I am always in the practice of trying to strike that right balance, and oftentimes don't have it figured out at all. And other times I do. And what I would say is that it's fleeting. And so the tools that I rely on and that have been effective for me in the past is the practice of checking in, and checking in across all the different areas of my life that are important. So, of course, work, but then life is composed of so many other different areas: family, relationships, my health, time for play, financial health, all of these different areas. And when I feel like I'm in balance is when I'm checking in on all of those areas and just assessing where do I need to spend some more time. And when I do that, it might look like, okay, I'm going to carve out time to spend, time in nature with my family because that's something that's been lacking. Or, I need to call my mom and check in with her. It can be little types of things that sort of help to make those adjustments into a more balanced place for me. And then there are times, especially over this past 15 months, where me, like probably lots of other people, are walking around sometimes for weeks at a time in a bit of a fog of just life is happening and I can't keep up with this, or I'm in fear because there's this pandemic happening and so many unknowns, and feeling very much out of balance. So then start to just dive into work and don't prioritize my own self-care or spending time doing things away from the computer or what have you. And so it's just always that routine for me of, if I'm in balance, it means I'm checking in. How am I doing across all the different areas that are important to me? And if something is off balance, where do I need to, just even if it's little adjustments, need to make those adjustments so that I can kind of get centered again and move on.
It's so interesting to hear because, again, there's like some folks would believe that there is some exact formula to make it work. But I love this idea of checking in with yourself and finding where that is.
Mhm.
Well, and as we were talking a little bit about, working for LinkedIn, I've now heard of that startup. Yeah,
It's now owned by Microsoft, by the way. So it was, yeah.
it was destined and Microsoft, but that does definitely seem like a 24/7 job, and owning a small business is also a 24/7 job. Does it feel different, or is it very much the same, just change of players?
Yeah, 100% different. Many people have heard me say that kind of the most stressful, demanding, crazy time at the center is like nothing compared to a really crazy, stressful time in my corporate career for me, because it just feels more aligned with my purpose and what I'm here to do. I think is the biggest factor for me. I think when I was in the corporate world, it just, I didn't see, for all the work hours, the 24/7 of it, what was missing was seeing the impact often of that work, seeing how it landed for people, because of just the nature of what I was doing. And very metric driven, I was in market research, so it was data, it was reports, and then providing that out, and then hopefully somebody's taking your recommendations and suggestions based on what you see in the data, but you don't know. So here in this realm and what we do, it is 24/7, especially having a family business where for everyone in our family, it can be 24/7. But there's, the other side of that, which is the community that's there and that supports, and that you hear the positive impact that you're making in people's lives. So for me, that was the game changer and the difference.
Very interesting. And it, again, doesn't, as you said before, I think in his part, which is didn't necessarily change the amount of hours, but boy, did it change in how it felt. I mentioned a bit at the beginning that you have undergone a lot of change in a short amount of time. What are some of the factors that led you to open a retail storefront in the midst of the pandemic?
Yeah. So, wow. Yeah. Crazy to think about, right? What we've all been through across the whole community. And so, yeah, for us, a few months into the pandemic and being shut down, it became really clear that the longer we stayed shut down, the harder it would be to reopen both of our locations. We had opened a second location a few years ago in the Marigold Shopping Center and made the decision end of May that we needed to close that location. It was sort of a, we need to contract so that we can come back and grow again in the future sort of decision. And so that was really hard. We poured a lot of resources and passion into creating that center and that building. It was really hard to see it go, but it was a situation, fortunately, of one door closing and another opening, because literally probably a month after we closed the door for Marigold, our Marigold location, the ground floor spot in our downtown location opened up. And we just couldn't miss an opportunity to take that space. We have the top 2 floors and had always thought how wonderful it would be to have that ground floor space. And one of the things that was hardest for me about closing our Marigold location is that it was more accessible. Our downtown location is up 2 flights of stairs. And so, being able to open up a new spot where we could have part of it be retail and part of it be a ground floor studio that was more accessible was just, we had to make it happen. So that was kind of there was never a question of like, does this make sense in the middle of a pandemic? Is this a good idea? It was, we just have to do this and we need to figure it out. And so thankfully we were able to pull that together, and getting into retail was very much something that we thought, okay, well, we can't be open and operate. Retail can. What would it look like? We'd always had a little bit of retail in our studio. We always had sold yoga mats and some clothes. And so we always had a little section of retail, but getting into opening a whole boutique was a different endeavor. So we thought, okay, well, what would this look like for us to go into this space, and taking into account our values and our mission and that kind of thing. And what we got to was that there is an opportunity to bring to SLO something that has things that support wellness in our community in the way that we think about it. So of course it still has the gear like yoga mats and clothes and things like that, but also the ability to, bring in local makers of products and sell their goods at our shop, fair trade certified products, things that are made of sustainable materials. We're really proud to have a lot of our clothes made from things like recycled water bottles and other things that might end up in the landfill being used in creative ways. Supporting minority-based businesses with the products that we stock in the store. And so that just became, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense as a way to extend what we are already doing in a bigger way, still have it something that's authentic to what we're about. And we still have a lot to learn. So it's still new to us, but we're pleased with kind of how it's come together. And we're still learning.
Well, and beyond that, you also, to keep that going, because there were a lot of the rules and regulations around the pandemic, you launched virtual classes and then ParkBased classes around the same time.
Yeah.
Do you think those changes will stick around even as we are able to kind of re-enter health and wellness indoor spaces again?
Yeah. We're still doing virtual and we're still doing park classes, even though we are fully reopened. And so in any given class at the studio, there'll be people in the studio, and then there will also be people on Zoom taking class, which is really cool, which is just a really cool thing. And it's also been nice because like people that have moved outside the area can still practice with us. Instructors that have moved can still teach class for us in some settings. And then the park-based stuff has been great because, for a long time, that was the only way that anyone could do anything. And so, Parks and Rec was very supportive of having us use Emerson Park. We used a corner of Mission Plaza for a while for bar classes. We were doing classes at the Jack House. And we had a Sunday morning class that we've just been doing consistently that has a really strong turnout week after week. Usually 25 to 30 people that show up and practice together at Emerson Park. And I just was talking with Parks and Rec this week about continuing that, and in partnership with them so that we can continue to grow that offering. And I've talked to a lot of people that have said, yeah, I've always wanted to try yoga, but I'm a little intimidated coming into a studio. I don't know if I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want people looking at me. But the park has felt a little more comfortable for them. They can kind of have a corner, set up under a tree, wherever. And it's helped them to get into a practice, and they're so grateful for it. And I just love that. I love that story, because part of what we're about is making this practice as accessible to as many people as possible. And so to me, being able to continue that park-based piece or virtual is fulfilling, that mission that we have.
And beyond the boutique, beyond the parking, you just launched a rebrand and a name change coming out of COVID. Can you talk a little bit about what drove those changes and maybe some of the lessons for people listening on what you were thinking on that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we actually started the endeavor of rebranding probably a few years ago, because I personally, I love the practice of yoga. That for me is my passion, and it's not, yoga and practicing yoga is not just about the physical practice that so many of us in the West tend to think of it as like another form of exercise or a workout. It's much more than that. It's a lifestyle, and movement is a component of it. But so are things like really in touch with your breathing, doing those check-ins, that inquiry I was talking about, and meditation, and it's a mindfulness practice. And for everyone, there's different things that resonate with them when it comes to getting in touch with their body and their thoughts and their emotions. It could be spending time in nature. It could be an exercise class, a workout class. But it's doing that in community that can make a difference too. And so we introduced probably a few years ago some more workout style classes, fitness classes. We introduced bar classes, sculpt classes, that were outside of what you would say, or could say, as a yoga practice. And so it was important for us, just being in integrity with the practice of yoga, to make a distinction of, these are fitness classes that we're offering, and we have yoga classes that really are part of honoring the roots of yoga. And so that transition to the center and broadening what we are offering was something that we started back when we introduced those types of classes. And then prior to the pandemic, we actually did some work to really refine our mission and our values. And what we got to is that, we're here, the center is here to make a positive contribution to the community through movement and connection and mind-body wellness. And so, that in and of itself is just a broader frame. So it just came to that we had outgrown our name as Yoga Center, and the center allowed us to still hold on to our legacy, while also just being more true to a broader set of offerings that we have, especially now with having the boutique, having different types of classes, doing different community types of events, and who knows, where we'll go from here.
Well, and I think the naming's so great, because the center, whether that talks about where you go, a city, like a community center, or what you do internally, right? And center yourself. So fabulous. Love the name change. Love about what you do. As we're now reopening that chapter on, and things begin to feel a little bit more familiar, what are some of the things that you feel like maybe you've learned over the past 15 or so months that you think may be obviously helpful going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for me, the importance of self-care. And it's, we all have see these various sayings like you can't, you need to fill your cup first, or self-care is important, prioritize yourself, that kind of thing. But for me, this past year has really been about internalizing that, that, if I don't attend to my sort of whole being and going back to that balance that we talked about earlier, it will lead to burnout. It will lead to other sorts of issues that could result in injury or health issues or whatever the case. So really important. And I learned that in some ways the hard way. I went through moments of like, I just need to practice and work out and do all these things because it was a way to distract from all that was going on, which led to tearing a hamstring and just being forced to stay put. And so then the practice became, okay, I need to, learn, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to journal, I'm going to do whatever other things I can, but stay in that mindful place. So that was one of the learnings. The other is just, gratitude for the importance of community and the practice of yoga, because I feel like it provided tools to be able to get through this really challenging time and the resiliency that's needed. It's just was this constant coming back to and being accountable to my community in that way. I mean, it was just that reinforcement of that interconnectedness that is there. And that when we remember that, that's how we kind of all pull together and rise together. I just was reminded of that again and again over this past 15 months.
Well, so that's fabulous thoughts and beautiful thoughts about what that is. And so as you're looking in the future, are there things that you're particularly hopeful for the business and what you see coming?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, so much so. I mean, I think it's just continuing to do kind of what we're doing, which is continuing on this path of making this practice available to as many people as we can in many different ways. And that looks like things like the ParkBased classes, which are community classes. They're just, they're free, or donations are fine, but not required. It's things like our live stream classes when people can't get away, and it's, they can only carve out so much time that might not include driving to the studio, parking, and coming in. And then, like I said, on the retail side of things, we just have more things to learn, in terms of seasonality of that type of business, trying to get our e-commerce going. And so for me, we just sort of set intention around, how can we be of service to the community? How can we make a positive contribution that's in line with our mission? And then what that looks like in terms of the tactics, we'll see how that plays out. But so far we're trending in the right direction finally. And I hope that continues for us and for everyone in the community. And then for myself, again, attending to that balance. It's just an ongoing, never-ending process and journey.
Well, and I just want to throw in a question that came out of the comments, which I thought was great, was there something, did you have, like, was there a faith that kept you going through the biz, that your business would come out of this okay and stronger? Was it like just determination that it was going to, or did you really think, like, based on what's happening here, yoga will be something that people need coming out of this pandemic?
Well, so I'll say two things on that front. I mean, one is that Yoga Center, that business was established in SLO in 1991. So it's 30 years old, and I think we're the fourth set of owners. So there's been multiple owners, and it's operated in multiple locations around town. And I don't know if a lot of people know that, but I feel like because of that history, and because we have members that have been members for longer than we've owned it, Yoga Center will just live forever in some way in SLO. So I don't think I ever was too worried about it. I didn't know what it would look like, but I felt pretty sure because of the community that we had, that right from the get-go, we're like, we are here, we support you. They were hanging with us, they were keeping their memberships going, many people. Just right away, we knew that the community had our back. So that was one thing. And then the other was just that, yeah, we need this practice and mindfulness practices more than ever. And so if we could weather through the storm, we want to be part of that conversation of how important this is, and made more important potentially by the struggles of the pandemic and so many people that were impacted by it. The more that we're all attending to our own health and wellness, the better.
Absolutely. Well, we've gone through a lot of our time, but I want to make sure people can learn more about the center. Where should they go to find out more about you?
thecenterslo.com. That's our website, easiest way to find out more information. On Instagram, thecenter.slo, and you can keep tabs on kind of all that we have going on. I will be at our boutique all afternoon, so you can come and say hi if you're downtown at 672 Higuera. I will be, and this probably goes to like what's going on this weekend, Emerson Park, Sunday at 10. We'll be out there for our weekly Sunday practice. So, yeah.
Well, as you've probably seen these shows before, so you know how we end it, which is, what are you looking forward to this weekend? And obviously, part of it will be the practice out on Sunday. But anything else going on?
Yeah, this weekend it's actually not a lot of plans, which isn't always the case for us on the weekends. So we're just looking forward to how that unfolds. I didn't get a chance to go to Farmers last night, so I'm going to go tomorrow to Madonna Plaza, load up on my fruits and veggies for the week, and just enjoy some time to practice, be with community, and then do that check-in I was talking about.
That's so great. And so for everybody watching, we will be linking below the web address and the other information so you can find the center. Steph, thank you so much for joining us today. It's so wonderful to hear you talk about this process. And again, so appreciative that you were here to share it with our listeners.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for the opportunity.
Well, as always, if you have questions for our guests, please feel free to add them into the Facebook comments below, and Steph and her team will hop on and try to get them answered when they get a moment. We want to thank all of you for tuning in. We hope that you are going to have a wonderful 4th of July holiday next weekend. We will not have a show next Friday, but we will be back Friday, July 9th at noon to talk with SLO City Manager Derek Johnson about what led him into city government management, the impact of COVID on the city, and what he sees for the future of the city of SLO. We thank all of you for tuning in. We hope you have a wonderful weekend. Stay healthy and safe out there.